Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance heavily imply that Xehanort first time-traveled during his days on Destiny Islands with the help of Ansem, for a number of reasons we'll dive into. However, when looking at Kingdom Hearts 3 and Dark Road, now I'm not so sure. I suppose it's best to begin with the most glaring discrepancy, the age gap. I'll be referring to 3D's depiction of young Xehanort by his regular title, but for the younger Xehanort we see in the chess scenes and Dark Road, I'll refer to him as Kid Xehanort for clarity's sake. The first time we ever see young Xehanort in the series is at the very start of Birth by Sleep. Now let's hone in on the three most fundamental aspects of his design. His clothes, specifically the popped collar on his mid-length sleeveless jacket with a white shirt underneath. Secondly, his hair, distinctively long, running to the middle of his back with spiky bangs to the side. And lastly, his physical proportions, so his overall height, musculature, and frame. But the first time young Xehanort ever serves a major role is of course in 3D, where the only notable difference in appearance is the organization coat. In Sora's Nightmare segment, we see him without the coat, and we can safely surmise that pre- and post-time travel Xehanort are around the same age. He even mentions,
"Yes, this was where it started,"
suggesting that this specific meeting with Ansem was when he first traveled through time. His Dream Drop Distance design keeps in line with his Birth by Sleep one, so no problems. Then, something very strange happened. The chess scenes in Kingdom Hearts 3 clearly depict Xehanort as being even younger. If you recall, these chess scenes were some of the earliest promotional content we ever received for Kingdom Hearts 3. Yet Scarlet Adkylum was revealed way later down the line in one of the final trailers. So for quite a while, we had no idea exactly when these scenes took place. At this point, young Xehanort had one specific appearance, so back when this Kid Xehanort was introduced, it wasn't surprising that many of us assumed these chess scenes took place before his time on the islands. And that brings us to the real wrench in the works. Dark Road is set to portray Xehanort's childhood and the monumental events leading to his corruption. The game opens with Xehanort on the beach, dreaming about his past life as the player. We'll get back to this connection, but he's then confronted by Ansem, who persuades him to walk into a dark corridor, leaving the islands and arriving at Scarlet Adkylum. So let's go back for a second. This is essentially a recreation of the scene we see in Dream Drop Distance. But of course, now he's even younger. Even the time of day is the same, which differs from the sunset in the BBS flashback. So here's the big question. If Ansem led him to Scarlet Adkylum back when Xehanort was a kid, yet he supposedly time-traveled from Destiny Islands, then why is he depicted as being much older? I know what we're all thinking at this point. It's a simple model retcon. Retcons happen all the time in this series, it's kind of notorious for it. Back in the BBS days, Nomura and the writing team probably had the foundation and basic concept of young Xehanort figured out, but not a lot more than that. Even a mysterious figure, revealed to be young Xehanort without a Keyblade because he supposedly time-traveled before getting one, is obviously a man who looks to be in his 20s, and that's because he technically is. Mysterious Figure's model is literally Sax's model ripped straight from Kingdom Hearts 2. So when Recoded and 3D arrived, they merely stuck with the original character design and never felt the need to diverge any further, only for Kingdom Hearts 3's promotional stuff to roll out, expanding Xehanort's backstory with a more defined plan. And yeah, from a practical standpoint, this is totally what happened, and I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you that it's not. The premise of this video isn't to try and sell you on some bullshit fabrication, but rather point out why this is one of the most contradictory and problematic retcons in the entire series. It is heavily implied that Xehanort originally time-traveled from Destiny Islands with the aid of Ansem, since his future experiences, etched into his heart, would lead him to seek the outside world.
Still, my appointed path is now etched in my heart, which will first lead me to seek the outside world.
Keep in mind, this was all before Xehanort ever wielded a Keyblade. But with Kid Xehanort at the beginning of Dark Road, we witness a montage of the player from Union Cross, with text describing dreams of a life that belonged to someone else, and how these dreams beckon his curiosity of the outside world. Nothing about the future is mentioned at this point. One potential argument is that they only side with the dreams of player being his primary motivation because they can easily reuse assets from Union Cross, which is true. Recycling assets has pretty much been a staple, but it isn't like they haven't used screenshots from previous games before. And of course, being Kid Xehanort here, Ansem grants him a one-way ticket to Scala, where he then acquires his Keyblade and begins training at that age. And any evidence of time travel is nowhere to be found. So even before he leaves the island, there are some major inconsistencies here. I think we can assume that Kid Xehanort is around the same age as Sora or Riku in Kingdom Hearts 1, so either 14 or 15. So when taking the 4-year Tombstone time skip into account, which depicts young Xehanort with the appropriate hair, this would mean he would either be 18 or 19 here, which definitely adds up. He's even thematically compared to Riku throughout the series, with a stark visual comparison being made when Terra meets Riku. Young Xehanort's first placeholder voice actor was even David Gallagher. So if he's clearly older in 3D than when he arrived at Scala and began learning how to use a Keyblade, what's going on? Let's just assume he did time travel as a kid from Destiny Islands. This would mean he had to have aged 4 years in the future before being sent back to his time and original body at the end of 3D, which in and of itself would have massive implications. His time travel is already limited to some degree.
We are out of time. Neither the union of light nor darkness has been achieved, and we must all return whence we came.
So by himself, he can just traverse the future for years? If so, how many years? What are these limits? Why not explore the future for decades and return whenever you feel like it? Even on top of this ridiculousness, he'd need to go back to his younger body before Dark Road even takes place for any of this to make sense. Throughout the entirety of 3D, young Xehanort is not supposed to have a Keyblade. So why does he have one all of a sudden at the end? Well, the confirmed answer is, when Mickey stopped time at the place where nothing gathers, Master Xehanort was in the middle of materializing. So as this was happening, Master Xehanort's essence possessed young Xehanort, which allowed him to break the spell, and in turn grant him temporary possession of No Name, which doesn't actually look like No Name because of an alternate keychain that changes its appearance. This is a real explanation given by Nomura in an interview. This was never portrayed in-game. Young Xehanort gets a flicker in his eyes and there's some dark aura there, but not once are these specifics ever suggested or shown. They could have just shown some darkness from Master Xehanort's chair subtly flow into young Xehanort or something, but they don't. So if young Xehanort doesn't have a Keyblade, why can he fight with one so well? Oh right, because Master Xehanort is possessing him. But if he is, why does No Name look so different? Oh right, because of the keychain. I get that keychains can give you different abilities, but why have one? Why doesn't he wield No Name normally? Actually, where did this keychain come from? And it's at this point where you start to wonder if Nomura just wanted young Xehanort to have a cool Keyblade in the boss fight, but remembered he ain't supposed to, so he made some stuff up to justify it. But it's fine. If Nomura says that's the way it is, who am I to argue? I know this might seem insane for a person like me to say, but I think decade-old Famitsu interviews aren't as gospel as people make them out to be. These things have been retconned before. Look, no matter how you slice it, it seems incredibly unlikely that Xehanort time-traveled before he went to Scala. The only way this could be justified is if he travels back to Destiny Islands 4 years later and meets Ansem a second time. Specifics in the dialogue suggest that he may have had more than one encounter.
At this point, I still had no idea that I was talking to myself.
The decision to use the word still here implies that he encountered Ansem at least once before. However, this still doesn't address the change in clothes, as he'd now be wearing the same popped collar and white shirt he had before he left the islands. So this only further feeds into the notion that this is just a model inconsistency. Besides, Kid Xehanort may not have No Name yet, but he is certainly a Keyblade wielder. So if he did time travel sometime late or after Dark Road, which would match up with his age, then why does both young Xehanort and Mysterious Figure lack a Keyblade? I for one think this needs an explanation, especially if they went through the trouble to de-age Xehanort all these years later. So I can only take a stab at what's happening, but let me try and piece together some sort of potential rationale. Young Xehanort time travels twice, the first time being 3D, the second time being Kingdom Hearts 3. If we've already discussed why Kid Xehanort time traveling directly from the islands is improbable, then the first time must be around the 4-year time skip, as it's the only way it can fall in line with his age. We know the Master introduces the black coat to him, but we don't know exactly when this scene takes place in relation to the events of Dark Road, so that could further explain why he has a black coat. Only thing now is the yellow eyes. It is known that young Xehanort time-traveled more than once to meet Sora, so sometime after his meeting with the Master could have been the second go-around. Young Xehanort's dialogue could suggest that future experiences have already been etched. But even with this bridge of thinking, it's not entirely bulletproof. So here we are, back at the conclusion that this is just indeed a very backwards and problematic retcon. But what I don't understand is why? Why go through the trouble of making young Xehanort even younger in the first place? They already established his design, so why not keep faithful to it? If he had his older design through Dark Road and the chess scenes, there'd be no confusion. So why put themselves into this corner after the fact? With Dark Road hopefully just over that horizon, we may find the answers we seek. Just want to have a little chat. This video was on the shorter side and the editing was kind of played safe, and it's because I really needed to get this out before Dark Road, and we all know about Square Enix's communication issues when it comes to Union Cross and Dark Road. That could have been any place at any time, so I really needed to get this out. I couldn't kind of bog myself down with, ambitious editing. So I am fully aware that this video is probably not going to have the longest shelf life. I originally wanted to talk about characters like Lushu and Brain and Ericus and Unreality, and all of those things could have been addressed in Dark Road, and again, we had no idea, and all of that stuff could have been debunked very, very easily, and I didn't want to dedicate all of my time into one video only to be beaten out by inconsistent release dates. So yeah, hopefully you can understand that. I started this channel 8 months ago as of recording this, and I've released 4 main videos, and I have amassed almost 4,000 subscribers. That is like doing Kingdom Hearts theory videos, not even a year ago, and that to me is just, it's so crazy. And of course, you guys have been, honestly, I've been lucky. I've been so lucky, more than I could have asked for, really. So if you're watching this, listening to this, or whatever, thank you for being here and sticking around, and I imagine next time you see me might be a live stream reaction to Dark Road, depending on when that comes out. But the next video I do release is probably going to be a bigger one, and yeah, stay tuned. Of course, shoutouts to my Tier 3 Lord Kairu patrons, Tom Duke's Basement, PJ Scott Blankenship, and Chris Damasceno. Thank you guys. Yeah, I've said thank you a lot of times, and I'm going to keep doing it every now and again, so get used to it. Awesome. Bye!